Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to Microsoft Project for Beginners. This is lesson 11, and in this lesson we're going to be looking at the updating, tracking, adding changes, particularly though the organization aspect of how you can organize your files so that you can really sort of write the story of how this project is being built, which is very important. You want to have this information that you can see what the project was doing at different points in time and organize it really well. In the construction field, our projects, very often we have projects that run more than a year, several years, and while Microsoft Project has a number of baselines you can save and reset, ideally it's best to have your files organized into folders so that you can actually track how well they're doing and how well they did at certain points. If somebody has a claim, or you have to do what we call a contemporaneous analysis and go back and check how the project was doing or what caused the delays, etc. So it's a pretty easy process, but it takes a little bit to get your head around. So we'll go through this step by step, and I'll review a bunch of stuff that we've done in previous videos. I'll put some links into the previous video in the description below so that you can go back and really sort of get your teeth around the basics if you need to. And so let's move forward. Oh, and before I forget, don't forget to click the subscribe button and click notifications so you can be updated from my channel as I load videos on. I specialize in Microsoft project and construction project management and construction business management. I'm a professor of construction management, so it's kind of my niche area, and we're trying to build a community for construction professionals. All right. So I've got these tasks. I named them pretty simply. So if you just wanted to copy them and you wanted to follow along, you can do that. You can always freeze it. This has not got any resources or anything added to it. I just really want to follow the basics for how you update the project and how you'll save the files. So it's nothing too complex. In this example, I've got resources in previous videos though, and costs if that's what you're after. All right. So you notice you don't see the critical path here, so maybe I'll click on the Format tab here. Let's see where the critical path is. There it is. I've got everything in auto schedule, so that's good. And so if this was what I wanted to do, I would save this project. Like if this is my plan for the project, I could now set this as a baseline, go to the Project tab, click on Set Baseline. And I'm going to set baseline for the entire project. So I'm going to leave that. It's going to take a snapshot of that once I do that. I know I've set the baseline. If I go back and it says last saved, I know it was already saved. I would also see if I go click on the square icon box, go to the variance screen, I would see these filled in. Otherwise, it would just say NA as non-applicable. This way I can track my variances on the project as we make changes. Okay, so if this is my baseline is set here, then what I do need to do is save this file. Now I've already saved it, but I'll save it again just for your convenience. I'll go File, Save As, and I'm going to save it in the folder it was called. And what I would do is I would create a folder for this project, and I would keep all of the updates organized in this folder. I usually will name the master project file 0, whatever your job number. This is again kind of unique to your company or whatever, but if you have a job number and then a name you want to call this project, I'm just calling it task project because that's all that it's got in it anyways. I haven't got any details in it, but if it was an office remodel or a new build, I might put the address or the client name in there. And master, so I've got master schedule. You might put either master or master schedule, and then the date. And so if this is the date that you've set the baseline, then that's fair enough. You could put that as the date and click save. And because I've already saved it, it says, do I want to replace it? I'll say yes. Okay. All right, so we've got that saved. And now the next step is we would do an update. And an update's probably going to take place, about a month or so down the road. And I'm going to put in a status date. So as long as I've set the baseline, I'll put in a status date, and I'm going to go over here. I find sometimes it gets a little bit buggy when I do it over here for some reason. So I'm going to go over here, project information. I'm going to go status date. Right now it's showing the 27th of March. And so I'm going to put it down as the 29th of April. And I'm going to click OK. And so now I've got that status date, and that actually should show it over here. So status date April 29th, and the year in this case. And I don't see anything over here, but I'd like to see the status date line. So I'm going to right click my mouse over this blank area on the Gantt chart. I'm going to click on grid lines. I'm going to pull down and I'm going to go to status date. I'm going to click on here, the solid line. I'm going to make it red and I'm going to click OK. And now I can see the status date line, and I am going to, at this point now, I am going to say that I'm going to do my updates. So I'm going to say what actually happened. I'm going to click on the square icon box. That's what I call this. Right click, and I'm going to go to the tracking screen. And in the tracking screen, this is where you can put your actual starts and actual finishes for this activity. I usually insert the duration column in the screen by right-clicking, insert column. As long as you know the first letter of the column you want to insert, type it, D for duration, and now I can just select it. And so now I've got my duration column there. And I'm going to say task 1, it was supposed to take 20 days. I'm going to say it took 22 days. Okay, so I'm going to say it took 22 days, and I'm just going to click here, and then I'm going to say it's done. Now the quick way to say it's done, I could put actual start, actual finish dates. I could put in 100% there. That would do the same thing. If I click on this task tab here, and I'm over here, there's some nice little tools here. So that would be doing the same thing as typing in 100% or putting the actual start, actual finish. So in that case, I've got that done. And then I'm going to say that this activity went as we planned, like after it got delayed somewhat, and you'll see that in a minute. So I'm just going to mark it on track. So I click the square icon box, and I'm going to go along here. Mark on track will mark anything on track to the left of the status date. It won't mark anything to the right. So usually all I do is I just click the square icon box, it selects everything, and if everything to the left is where I want it to be, it'll just update them to the actual status date, right? And it'll say what percent of this activity is actually done. So it's saying 10%. So this would be the equivalent of 3 working days out of 30 working days. Right. So now I'd like to see, well, how much are we delayed? And again, I go into more detail in some of the other videos on this, but I right click and I'm going to go to my variance screen, and I'm going to see how much delayed am I. And I can see I'm 2 days delayed. So that's telling me I'm 2 days delayed. I'd also like to see it in the tracking Gantt. So I'm going to slide to the left, right click, go to the tracking Gantt screen. All right. And in the tracking Gantt, maybe I'll make that a little bit bigger for you. People are always asking, how do I make this bigger? The easiest way, you just go to Format, Textiles, or if you want to make it smaller, if it's too big, click whatever size you want. I'm going to click 14, and then it's bigger. So that's all you have to do for that. All right. So I made it bigger in that sense, and now it's in the tracking. So I'm going to go back to the variant screen here. All right. So now I can see I've got 2 days variance. I would check what happened here, and I would explain why, and I would actually put a note in the actual activity. So I would double click on the task and I would put a note, why task 1 is delayed, why task 1 is delayed, right? I'd put that in there, the actual reason why it was delayed. That way you can always refer back to it and you know what's going on. And you know what? Now you're done your update. So this is just purely your update. And if you're in the tracking Gantt, you also have to insert that status date line again. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to go right click here, go to grid lines, pull this down, go to status date, select the solid line, click red. Don't forget any of these steps or it won't work. Like if you forget to click the solid line, you won't see it. And now you see it there. It's right where I darkened it up, and that's where I've updated to. All right, so now this is where I'm getting into all the new stuff, is the file. I'm going to get into the file saving protocol. So I'm going to go File, Save As, right? So I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go to that same folder I was in. And you see the name is the same right now. Well, I'm going to change the name. I'm going to change this to Job 1. And I'm going to put in here I got task project, and I'm going to put in here my update, right? So instead of saying master project schedule, I'm going to say update, and I'm going to change the date to that status date that I put in there. Now I'm trying to remember what I put for that. So let's just see if I get this right. I think it might have been around, let's see here, April 29th. I think I forgot. Anyways, we update to there. I would put that's the status date here, right? I'm going to go save, and I'm going to double check. If I didn't put the right one, I'll fix that after. So I'm going to go save, and what is my status date? What was the status date, right? So I go project. It was April 29th, so I did get it. All right, and there it is right up here, April 29th. So that's our update done, and I've got the master project scheduled there. Now I've got the update. So the next one is to do a recovery. And so to do the recovery, I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go to Lesson 11 again, that same folder. And now it's pretty easy. I'm just going to put in recovery, keep everything else the same, the one, everything. Put in recovery and keep the date the same. So I'm going to say save. All right, it's the same file as the update, but now it's called recovery, but now I'm going to actually do the recovery in it. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to, in this view, I've got task name, I've got start, finish. I'm going to insert the duration column like I did in the previous update file when I was in the tracking screen. And I'm going to type D for duration. I usually like to have it in the screen I'm working on. I'm going to scroll along and see where I'm going to save the time. Like, where would I get this time back? And so let's say I can't get it back on this activity. Maybe I can get it back on that activity. Maybe we're going to add more resources. Maybe we're going to work a weekend. Anything like that that we're doing that we could get the time back, I would do that. And I've talked about that in some of the other videos in more detail. But for now, I just want to get this back to 0. So I'm going to say that they would have brought a few extra resources, and that would shorten it up. And now we're back on track. So to be back on track, we should have a start and finish variance right here. Well, at least a finish variance at the end of 0 days. And I follow this sort of direct method that I've developed. I think I have that explained in lesson 9 or 10, called the direct method. Detect along the critical path, look sooner rather than later, all of those things to get the time back. All right, so now we're back. I'm going to click save, and that's great. So now I've saved this, and my project is back on track, back up to date. Well, fast forward, another month has gone by. And so we have to do another update. So I'm going to pretend it's now the end of this week in May. And so I'm going to go into my project information box. And I'm going to change this to May 27th. So the Friday there, I'm going to change this to May 27th. Okay. And I'm going to click OK. So I got May 27th here. And that's a new status date. So it's moved the status date now to May 27th. So I'm going to do a file save as right now. And this is the recovery file. So this is important to understand because I'm having my students and clients, sometimes they get confused. Well, what happens with the recovery file? Well, you know what? The recovery file, this is your new plan going forward. So you save this now as the update because the last month, between April 29th and May 27th, you should have been following this new plan. Now, of course, things probably won't go exactly as you planned. That's why we're updating it. But that would have redirected your efforts towards following this new plan to bring you back on track, to keep your project going the direction you wanted it to go in. So to do that, I am going to go File, Save As, And so that recovery file that I'm in, again, it's pretty easy. All I got to do is change this to 2 because this is the second update. We've started with the master plan 0. We did our first update. So this is update number 2, job 122. So all that's the same. The difference is we're now going to be update May 27th. All right, so update May 27th. All right, so now it says update May 27th. Our status date is May 27th. And now we're going to update it to that particular status date. So what we're really doing is I'll just draw it for you so you can see it a little bit better. I just went to Format Drawing Tools. This is handy as I was explaining the change order video. And what we're doing is we are looking back and we're updating from the previous update. So what happened from the last update till now? That's what we're looking at, right? And you know what? In this case, I'm going to say that everything went the way that we wanted it to go. So I'm going to say that everything went the way that we wanted to go. So we're going to do a update. And the easy way when everything goes the way you want to go, you can go to the tracking screen. You can click the square icon box. And then you can just say task, mark on track, and it'll mark everything up to the status date. So it's just going to darken this right in up to that point. If you're not sure what's going on because you can't see the whole screen, in behind me, I'm just going to, or I could go to Format and actually View, and I could say, show me this in months. So you see how it's squeezed in there now? So you can see it in months. You can see it a little bit more detailed. So what I'm going to do is, we saw that was delayed before, but then we got it back on track over here. I'm going to say up to the status date, things went pretty much the way we expected them to go. So I'm going to select everything, go to the Task tab, click Mark on Track. And you see how it updated that to that point? All right. So now because we didn't delay the project, I don't need to do a recovery, right? I don't need to do a recovery. Everything's good. Like, we're not behind schedule. If I go to my variance screen, we have here on the variance screen, clicking the square icon box and right-clicking variance, we do have a 2-day start variance, and this delayed, but we had already fixed that with our new plan, and we're sticking to that new plan. So that's pretty good. So that's looking pretty good. So that's great. We've done that. So that update now, I'm going to go File. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to pick my new status date. So I'm going to go to my project and I'm going to go Project Information and I'm going to click Status Date and I'm going to go ahead till, oh, maybe I'll make it a little bit longer. I just want to get a little bit further along here. So maybe into July. Usually you're doing a formal update every month, but for our purpose here, maybe I'll just jump it along a little bit here to try to get us, I want to get us into this zone here so we can see more stuff maybe happening. So maybe I'm going to say July 8th. All right, so I'm going to say, will that get us there? July 15th. Okay, July 15th. And I'm clicking OK. And my status date line should move. See how it moved over there? Yeah, that's where I wanted to get. Okay, so we've moved that along to July 15th. And I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go back to my same folder. Everything's in that folder. And now I don't need to do a recovery because we were on time. So I'm just going to go 3, Project Update. And I'm going to say July 15th. Right? Like I said, normally you shouldn't be leaving it that long. You would do it every month. And I'm going to click Save. And now I've got that saved up to that point. Okay, so that's where our update is. It's the current project file that we are using. And I'm going to say during this period, we've probably got another delay going on. Maybe what I can do is I think we'll extend this one, that this has taken a couple of extra days here. So we'll keep that going, maybe 3 days extra. And that's delaying our project, of course, because it's on the critical path. making one of these take longer, or it looks like it's going to take longer, that would not necessarily be true, but that wouldn't impact the overall project. All right, so I just updated this. Probably like something, maybe I got some information. There's something going on in the supply chain, so there's going to be a late delivery. If it was a late delivery, instead of changing that to 28, I could have actually probably better. If it's because of a late delivery and they didn't start on time, I could go to my tracking screen and get a better update on that. So I could say, all right, we're here, and the actual start date for this activity, which was supposed to start, let's see, it's supposed to start July 11th. Let's say that it didn't start till, July 14th. Okay, so that's delayed start, and that's pushing out the rest of our project. All right, but everything else went the way that we thought it would go. So I'm just going to select that. I'm going to go back up to my task tab, and I'm going to say mark on track. So everything is marked on track up to that point. I can see my delay, and I can see I've got a 3-day delay. So if I'm updating that, then that would be showing me that I've got a variance. So this time I am going to have to do an update and a recovery, because we got to figure out how we're going to get that time back. So in this case, we have our status date, which is here on July 15th, right? We've saved this as our update, July 15th. It's now completed, right? So I've saved that there. Now I'm going to go File, Save As, Recovery. So this is number 3, job 122, and I'm going to put in recovery, July 15th. And I'm going to save it. Okay, now I'm going to look at how do I get that time back. You know what? You know how I shortened, I made that delayed? Actually, I'm not going to make it that easy. Let's go down to here, and let's say that we're going to shorten 3 days off of this activity. Again, there's a lot of different ways that you can go to get that time back, and I was explaining them in my previous videos. This is more just showing you the timelines and the updating process of getting it back on track. So this becomes the recovery. Now you can guess, you know, I would save that, and then this is the file I'm going to use as my plan for the next month for what I'm following along with, because the dates are slightly changed and this is moved back and this is shortened. And I got to make sure that this, if it's a construction project, this trade partner is in agreement with bringing extra resources or what have you that I use to shorten this project. So you got to make sure that all those things work. But I've saved it. Now I've got this hierarchy in my file structure that I can follow, which is great. Now maybe I've got coming up something new and something different. Something's changed in the project. So maybe task 7 has a change order between task 7 and 8. And so I would insert that change. And so I'm going to go insert task. And maybe I'm going to call this task, let me just auto schedule that. I'm going to call this task CO1, right? So change order number 1. And maybe this change order is now going to take 5 days. So this change order is going to take 5 days. So you see when I inserted that, it put it back here. Now, what I'm going to do before I do too much here, I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go Save As, Lesson 11, and I'm going to call this, right, because this is going to be something new on a different timeline. So whatever date this is occurring, I'm going to say that I'm filling this out, and I'm checking this. Maybe it's going to, I'm going to put number 4, and I'm going to call this CO number 1. Oops. CO number 1. And I'm going to say August 1st. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this. So I'm going to link this to task 7. So I've got to go to my entry screen. And see how it just sits there at the beginning of the project? Well, that's not right. I got to link it to wherever it makes sense based on where it came up from, right? And so I'm going to link it to the task 7, or basically this row 7 here. And I'm going to go here. So that should move that along. Now it hasn't done anything to my project. So what I should do is then link it to what it affects. So if it doesn't affect anything, as a successor, it might say activity 10 has 9 and comma 8 as a predecessor. So maybe that's what's happening with it. So you know what? It didn't affect anything. It didn't move anything. But maybe that's not true. So maybe I'm going to leave that at number 9. And you see this is an open end. We've talked about that in previous videos. That's got to connect. That's just another reason, because it may not be telling you the true story. So I want to see how this is impacting the project. This particular one is to display the impact of the change. So in this case, I am going to link this up to, because it's we've got number 7 here. So I'm going to put 7 comma 8. Right? And now you see it's moved things. So how much did it move it? That's what I would like to know. That's what I'm trying to find out. And so I go to my variance screen. That's 5 days that it's impacting the project. It doesn't always impact the project the full length of time. Very often it just affects the project for part of the time. And I think maybe let's go back here. And sometimes when I do things fast, so we got that there. 7, 8. Yeah, let's see here. So we've got 7 comma 8. No, that's right. I just don't need that one anymore. Well, I'm going to leave that one. Yeah, I'll leave it the way it is right now. So we've got that there. We've got that linked here. We can see the impact of that on our project schedule. We might not need that link there anymore. And if that's the case, we could get rid of that number 7 if it's got to flow through there. There's no point in creating redundancies in your schedule updates, because then you start getting too many links that aren't necessary when you've got a flow through. So in this case, it doesn't change the variance anything, but it just makes it for a cleaner schedule to be sure. All right, so we've got that there. Now, let's just say we wanted to update the schedule to that date. I could, if that was the case. If I was just checking to see the impact of that change, then I'd want to fill out that change order and price it properly so it reflects those extra costs. Because now I know it's delaying the project 5 days. Perhaps I would want to pull that time frame back and do that with overtime and other things. So that's going to affect the cost of the change. Perhaps we can't even get the time back because now it's just going to delay the project, and it's gotten to that impossible zone where it doesn't matter what we do. So these are questions, but if you never put a change into your schedule and you never check the impacts, how do you know? This helps you, because I'm doing this in a very simple example. It gets much more complex than this in the real world. All right, so just going back to our changes, let's just take a quick look here. We've got, you see how they're all organized. That's why I put the number at the beginning. If your project was 30 months long, they'll all be numbered nice in a row. You can go back. Sure, they're by dates, but you can also go back by number and check by the various updates. The other thing that I would be filling in here, and I'll do this in another video, is a schedule narrative, which is generally a requirement, at least in the construction industry, to give an executive summary of what happened for the project. So I use that in my file naming protocols too. And maybe this is a contemplated change order. So maybe you're just checking so that you can price it, and then you can also take screenshots to justify, the impacts on the schedule and the cost of the change. The better you sell and negotiate this, the better it is overall. But you see how it's nicely organized. And it's not a big deal once you get into the flow of it to change the names, etc. That's why I like that sort of process there. So I'm just going to go back here. One thing, I'm just going to show you a few slides now that I've done, so it might help you get a better picture on what we're doing step by step. So I'll just go through that right now. So I've got the file naming protocols, and here they're kind of like outlined. They might be slightly different than what I've been saying for you, but the important thing is that you have a process in place. There's that narrative that I was mentioning. That's like a Word document usually that gives the highlights. I'll go over that in another video. Then we've got our remodel update. So this is a different project, obviously, different dates, but I'm just sort of showing you the process. And again, this has an update, a recovery, a narrative. An update, no recovery, it must have been on time, narrative. Update, recovery, narrative. Change order, right? So then this one has a change order in it. So when we look at the numbering and the naming, I kind of flow this sort of process. So that's the numbering. The only thing that's missing here is the 0. I would have the master project file at the top like I did with you. So everything's the same. It just say 0, job 522, office remodel, master. You might just say master to save the letters on the file naming, but it's master schedule. And it would say whatever the date is for your baseline that you set that baseline on. And it's just following it through with the names, etc. As long as you have consistency, like if you don't like that exactly, as long as you have some sort of consistency how you name it. But I really like this idea of the numbering, and it just sort of holds in the folder. You create the folder, easy to get at. You can pretty much tell the story of how this project went month to month to month. And if you mess up a file, you can always go back to the previous month's file to re-update it, which is good too. Which is always a very good thing. And then they're all listed in your folder like I was just showing you. So that's what I wanted to cover today, is sort of that thinking about that process. And just remember that your update, then your recovery, right? If you do a recovery, that recovery file becomes the update file for the next month, because you've got the new plan built into this, like how you plan to get the time back. So you're going to be following that. So when you update the next month, it should be updating from this, right? It will always keep the same baseline in it unless you have to re-baseline the schedule for another purpose. So it always has that original baseline in it. And then it flows from that. This is kind of the missing link that I find that people have trouble visualizing. Well, this is your recovery now. So it's the new plan. So next month when you update it, you should update it based on the new plan. And you just use that and just change the name in the file. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and it's another in our series. Again, I'll put some links to the previous one in Microsoft Project for Beginners. If you're more advanced, I have also on my playlist. If you click on my channel and look at my playlist, you'll see I have Microsoft Project Made Easy, which I have a lot of videos on that goes into much more in depth. And that will be very helpful for you, I'm sure, if you're a more advanced user. And as I have more of these coming out for the beginner series in the coming weeks. I'm Tom Stephenson, and please click the subscribe. Leave a comment. I appreciate all the comments, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.